control pushed people into debt and poverty.
Soon after passage of the Reconstruction Act, Klan leaders from all of Tennessee held a secret meeting in Nashville. The man granted control of the Klan was Nathan Bedford Forrest, former Confederate general and outspoken critic of Republican Reconstruction. By spring of 1868, the Klan had spread from Tennessee to every southern state. They embarked on a campaign of terror, a war of clandestine attacks. The purpose? To intimidate newly freed blacks and keep them from the voting booths.
The Reconstruction Klansman saw himself as the only vehicle to restore the Southern way of life and social order that had been disrupted by the Civil War. How do we put these outsiders in their place, these uppity blacks, through terror?
The first tactic was usually a warning, a threatening message left on the door of a target. When intimidation failed, the Klan resorted to violent acts. The most common abuse was flogging. Under the cover of night, victims were tied and whipped with tree branches. Some blacks incurred hundreds of lashings. Many died as a result.
The spectacle of these hooded night riders with these horrific-looking costumes was enough to terrorize people. And then they took people out, they tied them to trees, they beat them, they flogged them, they lynched them, they burned them out. Almost anything they were capable of doing, and they did it.
Amidst the carnage, Klan victims had little recourse. The majority of public opinion was in sympathy with the objectives of the Klan, if not always the methods they used. The Klan was able to terrorize with virtual immunity. From the onset of violence, General Forrest claimed to be against the terror. In January of 1869, he ordered the Klan disbanded, its records destroyed, its robes burned. Some local clans adhered to the order. Many did not. Several Southern governors enlisted their state militias to battle the Klan. The efforts produced mixed results. In the early 1870s, Congress passed the Enforcement Act and the Ku Klux Act. These laws made it a felony for two or more persons to conspire or go in disguise with the intent to deprive an individual of any civil right or privilege. When President Hayes officially ended Reconstruction in 1876, the last vestiges of the Klan disappeared. A victim of federal investigations, prosecutions, and in some ways, its own success. The end of Reconstruction signaled the beginning of a new racial caste system in the South, separate and unequal. A system that would remain in place for 100 years.
To begin disenfranchising black voters, and racial segregation began in public life. It was the rough and tumble rhetoric of Benjamin Ryan Tillman as South Carolina's governor that deeply influenced the style of Southern politics into the 20th century.
He was speaking specifically for the white farmer, and they liked this message that he gave about independence, about better farming methods, and about race. You had to be able to prove that you could read or pay taxes on at least $300 worth of property. Very significant, the poll tax, but the most commonly used was called the understanding clause. You go in to vote, and the registrar of voters is sitting there, and the registrar of voters who controls the polling place is white and is part of the power structure. And he would say, read this, and then interpret it. There was this method used called the 8-box law. It was essentially to confuse black voters. There would be a series of boxes. You couldn't just cast a single vote. You actually cast 8 sometimes more votes, and each ballot had to be put in the correct box. If it wasn't put in the correct box, then it was no good. Your grandfather voted, and you can vote, which of course for former slaves, let them out. You could vote if you could prove that you had voted in 1878, and you had 2 white people who were willing to testify to that. There were only actually a fairly small number of black Republicans still voting.
My race needs no special defense. All they need is an equal chance in the battle for life. African American Delegate, Robert Smalls.
The numbers of blacks murdered in this era will never be accurately known, but the carnage inflicted by the Klan was staggering. Certainly hundreds were killed, thousands injured. As the 20th century dawned, the Ku Klux Klan was a fading memory. Recollections of the hooded order were tainted by popular literature, which portrayed the invisible empire as an heroic force, simply battling to maintain the proper social order. This fanciful remembrance would help fuel the Klan's revival. On Thanksgiving Eve, 1915, 16 men gathered atop Stone Mountain in Georgia. As night fell, a towering cross